Very good. I turned my microphone on. Is it working? Yeah, I can hear myself. So my name is Amelia Andersdotter. This is my colleague Anders Jensen Urstad. Together we work with an organization called Dataskydd.net, which is a Swedish non-governmental organization that is dedicated to improving data protection technically and legally. We do political work with respect to the government, feeding into public consultations at the Swedish and the European level, and presently we're also running a project to help municipalities become better at implementing data protection measures at their websites. So, good news everybody. We have a new data protection regulation in the European Union since 2015. Knowing that this is Norway and you're not formally part of the negotiations, I'm reasonably certain you will still be affected by the data protection regulation, which is one harmonized legal framework for all of data protection in all of the European countries. It has lots of new interesting features like better sanctions and a paragraph on privacy by design, which I think is very related to what we'll be talking about today. But I hope to convince you that just the idea of having a long law doesn't need to be complicated in and of itself, and that in fact, you don't need to care so much about the legal texts as long as you're aware of some of the fundamental principles that underlie and underpin data protection legislation. So we might ask, why do we have data protection? Why is this important, and why do we have such long laws that guarantee for individuals these rights? Well, it's a human right, is the first thing. So it's codified in both the European Convention of Human Rights and in the European Union Charter of Fundamental Rights for Individuals. Data protection has increasingly been seen as the way of guaranteeing end user and consumer influence over their lives. It's a way to guarantee the rights of the individuals with respect to governments, as we are increasingly using data processing, big data techniques, in order to advertise products or opinions to people. It becomes increasingly important for democratic reasons that individuals can have an idea of who influences them, why and for what reason, and what that means practically in their day-to-day lives. So human rights are very important. And this is the quote from the European Convention of Human Rights, which says that everyone has the right to respect for his private and family life, his home, and his correspondence. Now, this is interpreted very broadly in human rights law, so it's not just that you have literally the right to send a letter which isn't being read by anyone. It's more about having the right to safeguard your own identity. In order to become who we are, we need to be able to keep certain things private from certain people at certain times, and we need to have an idea of who is trying to influence us, who is trying to send us messages, for what reasons, what interests do these individuals have, do I want to be influenced by these people? These are the rights that are meant to be enshrined by this text, although the text is, of course, quite abstract in relation to the practical implications of it. So one might ask why we're talking about data protection and not data security. Data security is very important, and we will have some concrete tips on how you make your website more data secure. But data protection is not the same thing as data security. It is possible to violate somebody's privacy in a secure way. And I think, in fact, intelligence agencies do this routinely. They have fairly good security practices, they're just not doing it with a regard for human rights. Data protection is very specifically about protecting the individual's right to security. It's about protecting the individual's rights to his or her own data and identity, and how to ensure that you have user centrism, putting the individual in the center for influence over that individual. The new legislation features a few important principles that I promised I'd run through. So first of all, we have the right to know. An individual should know who's trying to influence them and how. They should know when the influence is running amok. This could, for instance, be breach notifications when you have a security problem, but it could also be simply just informing the user of who they are in contact with. A massive problem on the web right now is that whenever you visit the website, you might get in contact with up to 40, 50, or even 100 different companies, all of whom you haven't expected to be in contact with. You visit an online newspaper, and suddenly you have relationships with companies based in 40 different countries. Normally, people cannot anticipate that unless you tell them. The right to know is about having individuals understand who they are contacting, for what reason, and why, and and also that they can make it stop, which is the right to consent. The other thing about relations from an individual's perspective is that you choose who you have a relation with. The mere fact that I visit a particular online newspaper does not mean that I want to also have contacts with 40 different companies in 40 different countries. So the data protection regulation has this right to consent that I can choose who I interact with. And so preferably should all of you be able to decide. The right to consent has some exceptions from it, of course, but a very good baseline principle is always allow individuals to choose who they interact with. It can't hurt to give people the influence over who they maintain relations with. User centrism is, again, just the recodification of these two prior things, as well as data minimization, which is don't collect more data than you actually need about somebody. Data minimization is the principle in the data protection regulation that is most closely connected to security for the simple reason that you can't leak data that you don't have. And you also can't force opinions on people with data that they don't have. You can't influence them based on profiling, based on data that you don't have, and so forth. Data minimization is simply a sound principle from a data protection perspective and from a data security perspective. It puts a lot of worries outside of your head. If you don't have to think about how to protect the data because you don't have it, that's much better for you than if you collect lots of data and then suddenly you have a big problem with a big database and you don't know how to deal with it. The EU legislation also contains effective sanctions against wrongdoing, because one of the massive problems in the past has been that even though all of these principles priorly haven't been exactly new, the fact of the matter was that up until last year, you could very easily violate either of these principles and get away with it very cheaply. So in some member states, the maximum penalty for not respecting data protection rights would be 20,000 euros, which can sound like a lot if you're a small and medium-sized enterprise, of course, but if you're Google, let's say, and in a lot of the cases, the bigger privacy violations are occurring on huge platforms with a very large user base, 20,000 euros isn't going to be much. So the effective sanctions are there in order to incentivize platform providers, let's say, or content management system providers, as would be the case for WordPress, to develop systems that are actually usable and where it's easy to respect all of these four other principles for those who try to implement. So our work in the past year has been centered on municipal websites. And you might ask, why do we work with municipal websites? What is the benefit? And why do we choose municipalities? Well, municipalities are public sector institutions, so they don't have a lot of commercial problems associated with them. While an online newspaper might argue that it's in their legitimate business interest to do profiling and advertisement on their users, clearly a municipality doesn't face these challenges. A municipality is tax financed, they have to be there. Anyone who lives in a municipality is automatically there. You don't need to advertise the municipality to them because they're residents. So the commercial situation is simply easier. The reason that we focused on websites was because there's actually a lot of simple technical measures that you can undertake with a website that makes your website fairly data protection friendly. They're cheap, they're simple, you can go to work in the morning, you can make the decisions over day and implement them in less than a week at no additional cost to yourself. So one could argue that we chose this focus because it's easy and cheap for us. But luckily, it's also easy and cheap for everyone that we try to influence with these policies or with this work. And so it's to give people an easy step into data protection. How can we protect individuals online? By undertaking concrete measures. We are now working on making a tool for individual citizens to help their municipalities realize when they're violating data protection laws, how they can stop doing so. And we hope to be able to reach out to more municipalities in Sweden over the next year and first of all tell them about the new European legislation and also how simple it can actually be to comply with it. In a lot of cases, people believe data protection to be more complicated than it is, but we hope that Anders' part of the presentation will provide you all with a good set of tools for helping your future customers also respect data protection. I thought that I would mention also something about the Safe Harbor Agreement, because this was very talked of last year. How can you transfer data to the United States? So in the past, you could do this under an agreement called the Safe Harbor Agreement, which would have been mostly applicable to you if you were already an American company, but the European Court of Justice said that the Safe Harbor Agreement is illegal because it blocks data protection authorities from investigating companies, and also it seems that the United States doesn't protect the privacy of non-US citizens. And so we have a new agreement now, presumably, which is called the Privacy Shield, except the Privacy Shield agreement doesn't exist. And also it's very unclear whether it's compliant with the European Court of Justice's verdict from last year. So this is still going to be a bit messy for some time. And if you're running a website and you're a Norwegian company, or you're developing website, you have your servers in Norway and you're a Norwegian company, you're just highly unlikely to be affected by these agreements overall. It also seems implausible that politicians at the European level will negotiate good agreements. So I think a good baseline assumption is, if you want to be perfectly safe about how you transfer data, do not transfer data to the United States or to a United States company without ensuring that the person whose data you transfer is aware that you're doing that and has consented to it. A lot of problems in data protection law can be solved simply by asking people if it's okay to do stuff. And you can allow individual users or visitors to a website to make up their own mind, and as long as the individual made up their own mind, you're legally safe. That's the way that data protection law works. So for some other legislation, if you're interested in looking up laws, you have the General Data Protection Regulation, which is now published in an informal version on the European Parliament website and will be in the official journal starting April or May. There's also a law enforcement data protection directive, which doesn't apply to anyone except law enforcement, like police and customs authorities, and so not so interesting if you're developing websites unless you're doing it specifically for law enforcement. You have the e-privacy directive, which is up for revision in the spring. The e-privacy directive is the source of the infamous cookie law that prohibits the setting of cookies other than by user consent. We have some tips on how you avoid setting cookies on your users that track them also, and it turns out this is much simpler than one could imagine. But I will not delay too much on the e-privacy directive. So the fourth issue is that the European Court of Justice is presently being asked a lot of questions about data protection law as well. With the increasing sanctions on large companies from the data protection regulation, this is going to turn into a very big economic issue. So we're going to see a lot of jurisprudence being developed, because anything that has a lot of money in it also brings a lot of legal attention to it, which brings lawsuits, which brings jurisprudence. So the European Court, for instance, decided on the right to be forgotten. They decided on the safe harbor. They've decided that data protection authorities can always investigate companies. And they've made a number of other verdicts on data protection law now that are going to be very important, including some on what governments can do or cannot do with companies and what they can demand from companies. But my general advice still, and I hope not to leave you with the memory of this long and relatively boring list, is that as long as you keep these 5 things in mind, just give people the right to know. Tell them what you're doing. Also design your systems in such a way that it's fairly simple for an individual to understand how their data is being